Hey everybody, Max Rich here, and today I want to talk about slapping. It's like a percussive fingerstyle technique that a lot of players use. Really, it's hard for me to play fingerstyle without slapping because it's a rhythmic thing. And it's part of the way that I keep time, and it's just a habit that I've built in from years and years and years of doing it. But at the beginning when I was first learning how to do it, it was like virtually impossible for me. It was like I couldn't do it. I didn't understand how people did it. I watched, you know, like some really great guitar players and they were all totally capable of doing it and I wasn't. And so I had to really kind of break it down and analyze it, and so I'm here to show it to you and maybe save you some time that I wasn't saved when I was initially trying to learn it. So basically, what is the slap? Well, technically, you're just basically taking your thumb and you're slapping the bass strings of your guitar. And what happens, if I turn my guitar like this, you can see I'm basically just hitting like the low E or the low A, maybe sometimes the D. And the string actually hits the fret and creates that little rattle. And that's basically all it is. It's just a percussive idea, you know. And the trick to making the slap an effective tool in your playing, whether you're playing, you know, like a groove-based thing or just like something like some small finger-picking idea, whatever you're doing, the slap simulates a snare drum from a drummer. And if you listen to like, you know, 90-something% of music, the snare drum almost always happens on beat 2 and beat 4, right? If you're counting, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The snare drum pretty much always happens on 2 and 4. If you think of like, if you're picturing a drummer, you know, do do ch do 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 ch do 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 ch do 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 ch. That snare drum ch hit is on 2 and 4, and so that's what we're trying to emulate. And so I'm going to show you a bunch of different examples, a couple of cover tunes, like riffs from cover songs, right? So we're going to start with like the intro to Billie Jean, Michael Jackson, because it's a really easy way to learn how to slap, because there's a lot of space in between the chord hits. And we'll go through a couple of things, and it'll get progressively more complicated, and then we'll end up playing Purple Haze with a slap. So if you're a fan of Hendrix and you want to play some acoustic version of Purple Haze with the slap and percussive stuff, this is a good place to start. So, Billie Jean. It's an F sharp minor, and there's really only 3 chords. It's really pretty simple, and you can make this more complicated, but for today's purposes, I'm just kind of keeping things fairly minimal. Feel free to, you know, expand on this and add bass lines and add all kinds of stuff, but for now we're going to keep things relatively simplistic. So, we're starting with 3 chords, and they're all on the high E, B, and G strings. All on these high strings, right? So, we're playing F sharp minor on the 2nd fret, move up 2 frets to G sharp minor, and then we move up 1 fret and we add our middle finger to the 6th fret, so now we're playing A major. 6, 5, 5, right? And that's basically it. That's just those 3 chords. Right? And the rhythm, if you can hear Billie Jean in your head, you know it starts with the bass line. We're not playing that part. But the rhythm of the chords are like this. 1. Okay, so the rhythm of those chords, if you're counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, chord, 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 right? So it's it's a two measure riff, and beat 1 of each measure gets a chord, and then the next chord happens on the and of beat 2. So 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. Dot, bop, bop, right? So the nice thing about this, and if you're following along, you should check out the tabs because you can see it pretty clearly if you look at the tabs. But the slap has to be on 2 and 4 in order to simulate that snare drum, which is nice because we have time. We're not playing anything on beats 2 and 4. The only things we're playing are those chord hits on 1 and the and of 2, and then 1 and the and of 2. So what we're going to do, we're basically going to play 1, 2, and then we slap with our thumb. And you know, like, as you get better at it, you could be a little more accurate as to which string you're slapping on, but for now, essentially just slap on maybe the A string, maybe the E string. It's not the end of the world if you slap on all of them, you know, but try to make that percussive, snappy sound, right? So we're going to go 1, 2, and, right? So that's the idea. 1, right there. 1, 2, and. And then there's nothing really on beat 3. 1, 2, and 3. There's nothing. And then beat 4 gets another slap. So 1, 2, and 3, 4. Like that. And then it's the exact same thing, except now we're descending starting on the A. Right? That's basically the whole thing. It's nice and easy. And the trick to this, what made it difficult for me when I was kind of trying to learn this, is a lot of players get sort of an instinctive rhythm on beat 1 and 3, and that's not what you want. That's, you know, when people say like, oh, he's got kind of like white guy rhythm, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about clapping on beats 1 and 3. The heavy beat, the accented beat of almost everything in Western music is beats 2 and 4. So if you watch people who really know about music and they're clapping along to a song, you know they're clapping on beat 2 and 4. Boom, boom, doom, 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 doom. Right? That's on 2 and 4. And so you really have to build in the habit of being able to play and think and feel the rhythm on beats 2 and 4. And this will sort of begin to like automate itself in a way. All right, so that's Billie Jean. Right there. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to kind of start adding in bass notes and chords, right? Because that's a key component if you want to learn how to slap. And so we're going to start with basically just a bass line. Now the trick to doing a bass line, especially if you're changing strings, we're going to have a real simple bass line. It's only going to be 2 notes, E and B, right? So 7th fret, 7th fret, A string and E string. But the trick is, in between each of those bass notes, remember we're always slapping on 2 and 4, so we have to sort of slap on the string that we're going to be playing next. So, for example, if my bass line goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm playing E on beat 1 and B on beat 3, then I have to slap on 2 and 4. Now, if I'm playing E on beat 1, that's fine. Then my slap has to come on beat 2, and when I slap, I want to slap on the 6th string because that's the next bass note I'm going to play. And then when I slap again on beat 4, I want to slap on the A string so that I could just keep my thumb here and then play the next bass note, which is the A string. We're just bouncing back and forth between the A and the E. So the idea is to slap on the string you're going to play next so you don't have to like adjust your thumb and move. Right? That way, if you kind of like don't hit it all the way, or you hit a little too far and your thumb goes like in between the strings, your thumb is there and you can always pluck that bass note and you end up getting that bass note after the slap. So the rhythm we're going to do here is pretty similar. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 4. So we're taking that rhythm from Billie Jean and putting that as the second measure. 1, 2, and 4, right? So it's going to go. So I'll slow that down. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1. And if you watch from the side, okay, cool. So now what we're going to do, we're going to take that bass line and we're going to start adding in a chord, a real simple chord. We're basically just going to make like a B minor 7, right? But we're going to stagger the chords. So we're going to play bass and then the inside strings 4, 3, and 2, right? And so that we're going to play that after each of the B bass notes. So it's going to sound like this. So if I speed it up, right there. So it's got a nice rhythm and it's got a groove already. You can already hear the potential for this kind of a thing, right? So if I take away the chord, I get... If I add the chord, I get this. Okay, so if we wanted to, we can expound on this and keep going, right? We'll go one level farther. And so now when we play the E bass note, we're going to play an E minor 7 chord, which is just your standard E minor 7, 7, 9, 7, 8, right there, on strings 5, 4, 3, and 2, right? And so in place of just the E bass note, we're going to play that chord now, right? So it becomes this. Right? And it's really, left hand is really simple. You're just basically doing that and that and that and that. You're just putting this chord on and off. But the right hand, right, putting that together, making sure that that slap is always on 2 and 4. Right, so you can, like I said, you can take this and you can start adding melodies, you know. Right? You could do a bunch of stuff as you get more proficient at it. Eventually, the time will come where you don't really have to think and map out where the 2 and 4 is. You can begin to feel it. If you can already do that, then you're kind of ahead of the game. One thing that may help you is, and this is going to be really, really difficult, and I'm sure everyone says, play with the metronome, play with the metronome, and you totally should, but try turning the metronome, if you're playing a song at, let's say, like 100 beats per minute, and it's just a random number, if you're playing at 100 beats per minute, that's every click. 1, 2, 3, 4. Every beat gets a click. Try cutting that number in half down to 50, so you only get 2 clicks, but this time, those 2 clicks have to click on beats 2 and 4, right? Which is going to be very, very, very difficult if you've never done this. If you are used to hearing a metronome on every click, and then you try to switch that metronome to the only time you hear that click is on beat 2 and 4, that means beat 1 and 3 have to be silent as far as the metronome is concerned. And your instinct is going to want to play on that click, and you have to rewire your brain to register that the click means beat 2 and the click means beat 4. And that's sort of how you can help internalize this concept. So anyway, next thing we're going to do some Travis picking. Which, you know, if you know, that's kind of like a moving bass line with some melody stuff attached to it. Not so much blocked chords like we just did, but more chord melody with moving bass line. So that's coming up next. Okay, so we're going to do some Travis picking now, and before we start, I'm going to play it for you so that you can kind of hear the example that we're dealing with, and then I'll break it down. So here we go. Okay, so it's real simple, it's a small thing, but you know, the idea is to take a little tiny example like this, understand the technique and understand how to do this so that then you can move it to different chords and different riffs and all different kinds of stuff, right? So I'm not playing some big massive idea, but there is some complication to putting all these parts together. So the bass line in Travis picking, or in this example, is basically just going C, G. Right, with that slap. 1, 2, and. So 1, 2, and, 4, and. And it's like a 2-bar phrase. So it's 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4. 4. Sorry. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4. And then that repeats. Like that. And we're starting, basically you can like make a C chord maybe without your middle finger, and we're starting with a pull-off. Right? So now we're taking our pinky, putting it on the high G and pulling off. And then doing our slap. And we're slapping on the low E because the next bass note is a G, so we have to move our ring finger. So it's going to be like that. Right there. And then after that slap and then G, we're playing the index finger on the B string. And then climbing up to the high E. Like that. Ah, sorry. Right there. And then we slap, and then another bass note back to C. Like that. And then we do a pull-off after that slap, bass note C. We do a pull-off on the G string, A to G. And then slap and G bass note again. And then here's the tricky part. After that slap G at the end of the second measure, we play an open B and hammer on to C, but when we hammer on to C, we have to slap at the same time. Now this is a technique we haven't talked about yet, but it's super, super important. How do you play a note and slap at the same time, right? Like you can slap like that, like slap a bass note, right? But what if it's a high note? There's two ways of getting a high note or a chord to ring out with a slap at the same time. One is to hammer onto it, right? So we're gonna play basically like and 2 or and 4. In this case, it's and 4, right? So the second measure goes 1 and 2 and 3, 4, right? Right, and so in this case, 3, 4, we're playing that open B, and then hammering on to that C at the same time that we're slapping. We're not playing that string again, we're just slapping at the same time. Now you could play that, right, that's another technique. This technique, which I'm not using today, this is a lot harder, but you basically pluck that note, and you have to pluck it outward like this, and at the same time roll your hand this way so that your thumb slaps. Like that. That one's really difficult, so like you get this kind of stuff down under your fingers before you try attempting that one, because that one's really tough. And then the final way would be like to mute a ton of stuff and almost do like a raschiato at the same time as a slap. But that's a super percussive thing because you're kind of like hitting a bunch of dead notes, hitting a bunch of muted notes at the same time as a slap, and getting that note to ring out with the backside of your nails. But the one we're doing is that, and that's super important. The timing issue, I see a lot of players go like that, or where they're staggering. You got to be together. Right? So we have, if I combine the two measures, it sounds like this. Like that. And then it basically repeats the exact same thing, except the ending is a little different the second time. Now this time, instead of being this time instead of being at the end 3, 4, it's 3 and 4. So now on 3, we're playing the D on the B string, pulling off 3 and then hammering onto the C, right? So this sounds like that. So if I put those together, it's all 4 measures, put them together slowly. Like that. There you go. That's Travis picking. Next up, we're going to do Purple Haze. Okay, so before we get into Purple Haze, I'll play it for you, and then I'll break it down. So, this is what it sounds like. Okay, so Purple Haze, it's Jimi Hendrix, right? It's going to be messy. It's going to be like all over the place, you know? As far as noise is concerned, it's not going to be this, you know, we're not playing like, I don't know, we're not playing Eric Johnson, and we're not playing, you know, Andre Segovia, where it's hyper clean. It's the Hendrix. It's noisy, right? So you can have a lot of like noisy percussion, a lot of slides and things like this, right? But it uses all the elements we've talked about, plus a couple of those simultaneous note slapping things that I talked about in the last segment, right? So the beginning is a perfect example of that. We're playing just an octave, B flat and B flat, so 6 on the E, 8 on the D, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Slap has to be on 2 and 4, meaning that we need to go 1, 2, and we need to either pluck slap or like strum slap. In this case, it's Hendrix and it's rock and roll, it's like heavy duty, so I'll kind of do that. And the way I do that is I throw my fingers out, I kind of come at the strings this way, and as my thumb makes contact, I throw my fingers out. Now the trick is to be able to mute everything, so everything is muted except for that note that you want. Right? So that's kind of the idea with the beginning of this. And then we get into that. And it's the same idea. So now I have to slide into 9, 7, and then 8 on the B string at the same time as I slap. Right? So you could go and do the pluck slap like that. But like I said, this is rock and roll, so I prefer to do the strum slap. Like that. And now, after that, slap on 4, and then the next part is that riff, where we pull off G to D, and then it's open E, and then slide into E. Now that open E happens on beat 2, which means we need a slap on that. Now there's no way of slapping on a bass note and playing an open E string at the same time, because if I try to slap on like the D string while striking the E, my thumb's gonna block it, right? So the only way to get an E string to ring at the same time as a slap is by like slapping it like a bass player. Right, so I'm really just kind of slapping the string and then bringing my finger away from it real quick. So that I still get that percussive slap sound, but it comes with a note. So like that. And then I use my index finger to do that slide on the A string. And then a slap. And then that whole thing repeats. And then this time, so now I slap on 4 and then do another slide. So slap on 4, slide into E, and then I do a strum slap. Right? And then this next part, so now this next part I go G, open A, open E slap, and then hammer onto low G. Like that. Right? So that's like that. And then slap like that. So all the notes that happen on a slap, if you're following along in the tab, all the notes that happen on a slap, I'm playing as that, except for the low E, which is a bass note slap, like that. Right? And the idea with a bass note slap is that you come at this angle, don't come like this, try to slap like this. Remember, the string has to go inward in order to make that slap sound. So you got to either come like that, your thumb basically has to go from outside, away from the guitar, directly in toward the guitar. Right? Like that. And then that final like slide that I do is a slap on beat 4, and I kind of bar the 12th fret and just slap and get a Roschiato on those and slide up. And then comes the chord part, right? So there's 3 chords. It's an E7 sharp 9, so starting on the E on the 7th fret, it's 7, 6, 7, 8. And once again, it's 1, 2. So on beat 2, I slap, but I slap and get that whole chord. And this time it's not just a note, it's a chord. Like that. And that happens again on beat 4. So beat 2 and 4 get a chord slap. Like that. And the rhythm, the exact rhythm of how you like oscillate between the bass note and the chord can be like, or right? Some version of that, right? Hendrix kind of changes it every time he plays it, right? So if you listen to a live version, like Woodstock, it'll be different than the album version. It'll be different than a different live version. So he kind of plays that rhythm fairly similar, but he changes the little idiosyncrasies of that riff, right? And then he'll go. Now on this one, I'm playing it the way Hendrix would. I'm playing a G chord, right? Except my thumb is playing the bass note, the A string is muted, and then I'm playing 5, 4, 3 on the D, G, and B strings. Then I'm going 1 and 2, and on beat 2, once again, I'm doing that slap. Like that. So bass, bass, chord slap, bass, and then I move up to A. And I go bass, chord, bass, slap, and the slap happens at the same time as the chord. Right, so. And then after that slap chord, I make sure that my thumb stays on that E string, and then I can strike that whole chord. So. Like that. So. Right, and that's the idea. Once again, with all of this, like this is a process, right? You're not going to be able to go from not slapping at all to I could play Purple Haze today in an hour, right? It's like it's probably not going to happen. Not with the slapping thing, not consistently anyway. The big thing is that you are able to feel the groove and feel the beat on beats 2 and 4, right? So like I told you about the metronome idea, the other thing that you can do is like, can you just play the normal riff to Purple Haze or the normal riff to whatever song, and instead of tapping your foot on 1, 2, 3, 4, can you tap on just 2 and 4? Because the idea is to internalize in your body feeling that heavy beat on beat 2 and 4. If you can't internalize it and you're not feeling it and you have to count it and you have to like process it mentally, then it's never going to happen automatically and it's never going to sound natural. It's going to sound like you're counting, right? And that's fine to begin with, right? But the idea is to do that enough and do it correctly enough and practice it slowly and methodically enough that you are able to internalize beats 2 and 4 as the heavy beat, because that's where the slap is going to be like 99.9% of the time, right? So, like always, feel free to send me a DM or send me questions or whatever. You know, I'll help walk you through this if this is tough for you. Also, please check out www.maxrichmusic.com. There's a ton of free info, technique lessons, song lessons. I write a weekly newsletter with all kinds of cool tips. So if you're interested, please sign up for that. Gets you some discounts and some other cool member perks. And please like, share, and subscribe. It helps me out and helps keep the content free and keep it flowing. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.